Give us a bit of background first, but you're in the human resources world. How has it this last 4 years affect companies and what has happened? Have people disseminated to homes?
Yeah.
They coming back to
It
the office? Give us a rundown.
yeah, it's crazy. I do a kind of people strategy piece. So HR is part of it, coaching and training. So I take a broad view of business when I'm consulting with people. And the pandemic, we were one of the most locked down countries in the world, particularly Sydney and Melbourne. And I was in Sydney at the time. So I got locked down to a 5 kilometre radius for some periods of that lockdown, which was just even more mad. And, what I had been doing a lot of my consulting prior to the pandemic, because I kept saying, we've got to get digitalization going. We've got to get activity-based working going. We've got to get this going, because I noticed that young people were into gigs and, not wanting to come to the office and all that sort of stuff. And more, and I'm doing a thesis with mid-aged women, and it's more and more about flexibility.
Hi, my name's Robert, and I'm here with Vanessa Giannos, all the way from Hawaii, I guess via Australia and a couple other countries along the way. We had the luxury of meeting down in San Diego for 5 days we spent there with Brian Tracy. Vanessa is a co-author. I'm just reading off the screen here, Scaling Up Your Leadership Capability, her chapter in Brian Tracy's 93rd book with several co-authors. Vanessa, welcome to the call on the Side
Thank
Hustle
you.
podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for joining, and from nice and sunny Hawaii at the minute.
Not rubbing it in. We're here in
Not at all.
Vancouver.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, unfortunately for you.
I'm not going to complain.
You're
Maybe
used to it.
we can all aspire. Keeps my hair growing all the water. Just,
Yeah, that's right.
but what an aspiration for the listeners out there. We have a lot of young listeners, and I say young, it's all relative. I'm
Yeah.
going to say 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
Social media marketers, those who want to venture off into the world, and you're doing it. You're
Yep.
living proof that it can be done. At
100%.
any age. We have a few young guys that have taken off to Mexico. Was on the call with one of them
Nice.
this morning. He's flying back on Thursday to do some business. But he's gone now for about 2 years from Canada since the pandemic. Forced a lot
Yeah.
of people to leave. How has it
Yeah.
affected? You're in. Give us a bit of background first, but you're in the human resources world. How is it? How did this last 4 years affect companies and what has happened? Have people disseminated to homes?
Yeah.
They coming back to the office? Give us a rundown.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I do a kind of people strategy piece. So HR is part of it, coaching and training. So I take a broad view of business when I'm consulting with people. And the pandemic, we were one of the most locked down countries in the world, particularly Sydney and Melbourne. And I was in Sydney at the time. So I got locked down to a 5 kilometre radius for some periods of that lockdown, which was just even more mad. And, what I had been doing a lot of my consulting prior to the pandemic, because I kept saying, we've got to get digitalization going. We've got to get activity-based working going. We've got to get this going, because I noticed that young people were into gigs and, not wanting to come to the office and all that sort of stuff. And more, and I'm doing a thesis with mid-aged women, and it's more and more about flexibility. And ever since I can remember, people have been talking about flexibility. And now it's a major career decision and company decision. So the pandemic, I had been doing a lot of getting organizations ready for what I thought was going to be, a 5-year kind of moving out of offices and kind of doing a hybrid gig. So I had quite a number of our larger clients doing that, but the smaller clients, and particularly those in the retail space, really suffered dramatically. And in the space, because for a period I couldn't move, so we were locked down 5Ks. So I was just locally trying to, contact all the cafes, because I said they were all closing down, all the restaurants. I'm like, no, don't do that. People will support you locally everybody, we can't move. So start doing takeaway, or start, figure out how to do curb service, whatever you got to do, but pivot, and pivot fast, and do it now. Some did and some didn't. And it was just really intriguing. And one of the things I thought was even more intriguing out of all, one of the things I did a series right up front when it first started, because I'm like, okay, so this is a major crisis, and crisis defines leaders. And I did a series on reminding leaders that the crisis will define you. And at that point, we didn't know how long it was going to go. I thought it was only going to be a couple of months. And the interesting thing was, the further we got into it, the more we got into it, I was talking to, employees of companies, and sometimes large international companies. And some people would say, I haven't heard from my manager since the beginning of the pandemic. It's like, how's that even possible that your manager hasn't even talked to you? Like, they might email them or what have you. And I was like, that is mad. We already had a gap in leadership capability prior to the pandemic, but the pandemic seemed to really broaden that gap, because a lot of leaders weren't prepared on how to manage.
And here we are, all the way from Hawaii to Vancouver, across half the ocean, half the Pacific Ocean, and we're on a meeting.
Yeah,
this is technology,
right?
We had the same crisis. It happened around the world, but I remember the moment when it actually scared me for a moment, enough to send everybody home from the office.
Yeah,
there was a lady who worked in our office with us, and her daughter called her and said, Mom, somebody at my work, it was a fast food chain, somebody in our work was sent home and they have COVID. And we didn't know what it was at the time. And I said, you know what? I'm an A-type personality. I grew up on the east side of the tracks. We don't take this government stuff lightly. But, I said, you know what? Let's just all go home for today. For today. 3 years, 4 years later, we're all still working from home. I'm in an office. We need an office to register our corporation here in Canada if we're working in financial. But we sent everybody home. And we pivoted. Canada Revenue, our tax agency, for years, tens of thousands of accountants, our e-file association, license association, have been lobbying the government for years, probably since I started, almost 20 years, said, allow us to do electronic signatures. And they're like, no, you can't do them. The first year, said, we're going to allow them just for this year, just for 2020. And then the next year, you know what, we're going to consider revoking this next year. And then after the third year, we're never going back to wet signature. I just got to work my way outside Canada now to
that's right.
Hawaii, and then I can work from the beach with Vanessa.
Exactly right. Yeah, fabulous. Yeah, it's an interesting time, because I think a lot of companies, even post-COVID, for probably the 18 months, did a lot of hybrid and tried to get that flexibility working going. But the lack of being able to lead these types of environments is really forcing companies, and sometimes some have other arguments for it, but some companies are pushing people to come back to the office full time. And I just think you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're doing your leaders a disservice if you can't figure out how to lead and manage a business effectively with flexible working, because it's here and it's going to stay. And more younger people, older people, everybody of every age wants flexibility.
You can't unring the bell. It's hard to take that vision away, or that thought or belief.
Yeah, and I work with techies. I've worked for techies for last 30 odd years, and I've been arguing with them prior to the pandemic that they're like, well, we can just do our job at home. We just sit there doing computer all day long. Why do we have to be in? Because you need to engage with people. You need to understand the business. You've got to be involved with the culture. Blah 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 blah. But I knew there was going to be a time when I just wasn't going to get away with that level of demanding you be in the office 5 days a week. And of course, now that's come. And, people just have to figure out how to make it work. It's not hard. It just takes a little bit of thought, and you've got to have your systems and processes.
I think, thinking about what you just said, there's some leaders, you said some were able to adapt, some weren't. And do you think it would make a difference if somebody was new in a management role, maybe somebody younger that didn't have enough experience? Or do you think that it takes tenure in a business? For example, in our industry, somebody who comes on the tax side as a senior manager has spent years in the industry. They know who to call at the agency.
Yep.
But somebody new, do you think it's a skill that can be taught, or is it something that you need time to achieve?
Yeah, one of the great debates about leaders, is it nature or nurture, or can you learn it and what have you? And look, there is certainly a type of personality that is a natural leader. But at the end of the day, the best leaders, and to hit that, and then very few do hit that transformational unitive leadership level, which is the pinnacle, you have to have years and years of learning forward, making a whole lot of mistakes, and really being able to understand people and business deeply and put that all together with strategy and alignment. It's not easy. And people go into jobs as a manager and thinking, oh, I've got the title leader now, so I'm a leader. And the amount of conversations I've had over the years is just because you're called a leader doesn't actually mean you are a leader. And so for young people, I think some of them will have a passion for learning and developing, but I think it's the same in any generation. Some want to be a manager just because of the money, and they don't understand the difference between management and leadership, and they certainly don't understand what it means to be a great leader. But then there are other people that just get it and work. I'm often amazed with the people I work with, what they overcome to just become great leaders, because they understand that that's the passion. You have to have the passion for leading and developing others. So I think it's a bit of both.
That's great. What I wanted to bring up now is the book. Do you have a copy of the book handy?
Do.
Let's just share. You're just covering your name there, but Cracking the Business Mastery Code with Vanessa and Brian. Wow. What an achievement. I've read everybody's chapter now, yours included, and I'm going to pull up on the screen. Maybe you could, the scaling leadership model. If you're wanting a copy of Vanessa's book, we're going to put the link somewhere around the video here, whether you're watching on Instagram, one of the reels, or on Facebook, YouTube. We'll have it on all the channels. So somewhere around the video here, you'll find a link to get an e-copy. But if you want a signed copy, are people able to get a signed copy yet?
Probably in the new year. So we've got to get them printed. It's only just been launched, as you know, in SD. So we've got to get them printed and out there. And from Australia, it takes a little while as well to get things out with Christmas post and all the rest of the things that go on. So people will be able to order shortly, and they'll probably be delivered in the new year, though.
Amazing. I'm going to share your scaling leadership model image here on the screen.
Excellent.
Of course, that's why I pulled it up. So you can get the full strategy around this in Vanessa's book, but also possibly booking a session with her. So let's just go over the scaling leadership model. I love this because it's one of the few images in your book that people can actually get a visual reference from.
Yeah. And I think it's important because when you talk about levels of leadership, people just go, oh, yeah, whatever. There's just good leaders and bad leaders. True. But it's the level at which you operate as a leader. And that is a mix of So I used to go with all the books about, leaders are, leaders, it's all about leadership, forget management. And then I realized I was only successful as a young executive, and I was promoted in a very large international company, technology company, as the youngest and the first ever youngest female or something or other, at 23. And I had a mega job to do, a mega job. And I realized that I was successful because I had learnt both management and sound management as well as the leadership stuff. And I was developing and constantly developing and developing. And so over the years, I've worked with countless thousands of leaders and CEOs and worked for many different CEOs and boards. And it is clear that there is a distinct difference between those who are able to think big picture and strategically, and those that can operate. But the real unicorns are those that can do both and bring it together. And that's what I can do. And I realized that I was a bit of a unicorn because of that. And those levels are levels that require different behaviors and different levels of thinking all the way through. And our model also has what we call reactive competencies, which are your mindset, self-limiting beliefs, control, perfectionism. We've all got them. And it's how you limit those and make sure you're not triggered by those, but you grow the competencies that are just so evidence-based now in terms of what makes great leaders. Yeah.
Something I'm reading here. How many employees did I lose last year that were not bad hires, and how many more employees are still with my business creating havoc? Brian said something about that over the last week. He said you fire them fast. I forget his term. What did he say?
Yep. Yeah, you fire them, you think thoroughly and you fire them fast. And I learnt very early on, because I'm a people person. So firing people to start with was just nearly did me in on me for time I had to do it. And then I realized actually it's only doing that because I'm having a particular mindset. And if this was if I had a valid reason and I'd given them plenty of opportunity and I knew it wasn't going to work and it was clear it wasn't going to work. And sometimes even I've dismissed people because for their own good career move, because I've said, you have reached, I can't give you that next level. You got to go get the next level. I will give you the reference and you got to go. You got to go do that. Don't stay with me just because you like working for me. You got to go now because I can't do that for you. I can't give you that directorship. I can't, what have you. And so when I started having to do mass redundancies in the 90s and that sort of thing, I learnt very quickly from watching another company completely stuff it up, that when you're doing dismissals or redundancies or those sorts of things, you got to go ugly early. You got to get it done. You got to be clear what you're doing, and you got to do it well and treat people well and celebrate people, not just, have them pack their box up and leave and never talk about them again. You've got to do it well, because it's not just the people that leave. And it's amazing to me. I often get emails from people that I've made redundant who say, oh my God, that was the best thing you ever did for me. Or, what have you, or your advice was the best thing you ever gave me. And it's also about the people left behind. People forget how you treat those on the way out is how people are going to assume you're going to treat them. And so if you treat them like crap, they're going to go, right, I see how we roll here, and I'm not going to stick around for that. And your best people will always go out the door fast if you mess stuff up like that. So it's really critical to do it well and do it fast and do it efficiently and with, people in heart.
It never ends. I had an employer, actually my first contract position in the early 2000s. I wrote a little bit about it in my book. I'll let people read up on their own who it was. But he had about 70 employees. And every time this owner boss of mine, I worked in the finance doing the accounting, but it was a trades job or a trades company. And all of his guys were blue collar workers, rough guys, most of them middle age. I went back through the human resources files. The average employee there had about a 15-year tenure.
Yep.
Some of them have been with him 25 years. And every time somebody got into an argument, he'd say, for example, Vanessa, you're really not happy here. I'll give you a great reference if you want to go look somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'd be like, oh man, no, I better not be upset about this. I don't want to go work somewhere else. He pays me well, takes care of everything, helps. They had a great group insurance plan for the company, all their health benefits. To go work somewhere else, you got to start all over. So I guess it's a double-edged sword, human resources versus employee.
Yeah, it is. And, I sometimes hate telling people I have a HR background, because everyone goes, HR this, HR that, HR. And, I agree, a lot of HR people are not great. But people forget HR is actually the most difficult of leadership roles there is, because you are trying to balance, be the employee advocate, do the right thing by the employer. You've got all the stakeholders, including all the customers and all the rest of the stuff. Plus, you're in the middle of all this leadership that you don't actually have control over. People just assume HR's got control. I'm not the CEO.
HR has many bosses. HR has many bosses.
Many. And it's tough managing all those scenarios. You can do it, and you can do it very well. unfortunately, a lot of HR people do it either way. They either think they're an employee advocate or they think they're just working for the man. And either way, that doesn't work so well. You've got to have that balance and think it through all the way through and through. So, yeah, it can be quite challenging.
I've never thought about it that way. Working, most of my adult life now in finance and accounting, we take care of payroll and the
Yep.
insurance programs for companies. Now we're in our own firm. But looking back at it, there was a few companies I worked with that had an HR department, and there's quite a bit of overlap
There is.
between, hiring, firing, um, making people happy at work, all the programs, implementing programs, training programs. I remember I was 18 years old. This is 40 years ago now, working at a hotel, and I was working in the valet department. We were driving nice cars, and
Yeah, nice.
we'd open up the convertibles when we were parking them, and it was a fun job. But they brought us into this training session. I still remember it, 18 years old. I thought it was actually crazy how to get a good night's rest.
Well, that was progressive back then.
40 years ago, it was. And looking back at it, I remember going home and trying out some of these techniques. And lo and behold, I get a better night's rest. So
Yep.
it was early on that I learned that these things, all of us young guys were in there joking around.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, maybe we should bring a date in to practice sleeping. And, what about if you have a partner? And the woman giving the presentation had all the answers. She said, if you're with a partner, keep your arm out straight and put the head here. And, if you have a pillow, this is the way you should fold it. This type of pillow you should have. It was great training, but we were
Yep.
joking around at first. But as she went on, she persevered with us because we
Yeah.
were the young rebels in the hotel. She persevered, and most of us left, just nodding and agreeing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazingly progressive because I have always incorporated well-being strategies because I have a whole other side into the work that I do with HR because I do think it is a mind-body experience and often a mind-body-soul experience for people. And, just trying to get people to only be a particular way at work and be something else outside of work, which used to be very common in the 80s, 90s, and even 2000s, really, sometimes even today. That whole holistic approach is really important because often people don't know. I'm amazed at what people don't know. I just assume people know so many things because I learned at a young age and I'm always learning and developing. And I just assume people know a lot of stuff. And, even just simple stress management stuff, I teach in every thing I do because I realize people don't actually know the actual simple stuff. And that is, being able to manage your stress levels, your triggers, understand what they are, and go a bit deeper on self awareness is critical for everybody, regardless of Rob, especially leaders, but critical for everybody's well being.
Yeah, maybe some people just gloss over those things and don't
They
pay
do.
attention. They don't think they're important, or they've
Yeah.
never experienced it from the other side.
Yeah.
But
And
that comes with the gray hair. It,
yeah, that's true.
it comes with the
Uh,
wisdom.
yeah, it does. And, I have done a lot of training with techies over the years, and particularly, those kind of digital kind of folk that have high IQ, maybe not so much EQ, and helping them understand more around the EQ side. And I love it when it clicks for them and they figure it out because they just become so much more powerful as humans and their whole. And I say to them, this training is not just about customer service or sales or whatever it is we're doing or leadership, whatever. Things I'm going to teach you are things that you apply to your whole life, like your relationships, your family, your business, your partners, whatever, your boss, what have you. They're all the standard fundamentals that make life great and the skills that make you capable.
I saw a great video on Instagram. Jesse Itzler, he was the founder of Marquis Jets. That guy has some insane stories, but he's a billionaire now. And he has one reel where he's created this giant calendar for the entire year and he plans out his personal life in December of every year for the following
Wow.
year. And he puts all of his personal, all the kids' activities, all the dates with his wife, all those important things. And he said he plans his work around it.
It's great.
And he said you don't have to wait till you're a billionaire to be able to do this.
Hmm.
And I think somebody created these giant calendars because I see them all over Instagram now, and people have
Right.
them up on their wall and they're mapping them out.
Yep.
I have one at home. I just printed off 12 pages and try and put in all the personal stuff in there first. The next one is actually in December going on a cruise. The first time I've taken off now in
Nice.
years. But
Nice.
I
Where are you
checked I
going?
checked the box to get the internet, so I'm not going to be totally disconnected.
Where are you going on your cruise?
Just from California down around Mexico and then back.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
it's
were
really
almost we
important.
were almost in Mexico there last
Yeah,
week.
that's right. Only 10 minutes away, 15 minutes away. It's really that is actually incredibly important for people to take time out. And when I'm coaching leaders, I often find that I'm like they haven't taken a break. They're uh, I'm often saying to them, do you realize how close you are to burnout? Do you understand what burnout is? And when we start working through some of that stuff, they go, holy crap, I haven't actually had an actual holiday where I do nothing or I enjoy myself or I'm not, on an adventure holiday, whatever the hell it is, or whatever. I haven't had a relaxation holiday for 2 or 3 years. Well, you just can't keep going. And in Australia, we're slightly different. We're very much about our holidays because we have 4 to 5 weeks holiday. So we're all about our holidays. And of course, we're at the end of the world. So, we need that time to get somewhere if we're going somewhere. But I am often amazed with Americans that even on 2 weeks leave, they sometimes don't take it. I'm like, how's that even possible that you don't even think to take vacation for 2 weeks? Like, that's just
Well,
foreign to
I
Aussies.
joke around. I only work half days now, and I even get to choose which half, the first 12
Yeah,
hours or the last
yeah,
12
that's
hours.
our house. Yeah, that's
Joy of
right.
being an entrepreneur. One of my first accounting boss, actually my second one. I talk about him in the book also. But my second boss was at the Greater Vancouver Food Bank,
Yeah,
Ken McKinnon. I'll mention his name, give him a shout out. Great mentor, and it was really my first internal accounting job. And I was showing up early, about an hour early for work to beat traffic, but also an excuse to get in
yeah,
and get a head start on what I needed to do
yeah, yeah,
because I didn't, to be 100% transparent, I didn't have all the skills I needed for the
yeah.
job. But for some
Hmm.
reason, he trusted in me to get it done. And I would work through my lunch sometimes. I came from the trades world to working
Yep.
in an office. And I did this for the first couple of months. And he came into the office one day and he said, "Are you not going to take lunch?" I said, "Oh, I got my lunch here. I just snack on it as I'm working." He said, "Get out of the office. I don't want to
Mm.
see you till 1 o'clock." It was 12 o'clock. He said, "I don't care what you do. You go for a walk, you go somewhere for lunch, you go watch a movie, play on your phone. Don't come back."
Yep.
And it was hard at first,
Yeah, it is.
but I found that I got so much more done in the afternoon when I got back.
Yeah, 100%.
It's just a
And
little
people
break.
really, yeah, people underestimate that because your brain can only function. I used to do the same thing on and on and on and on. I used to work well over 100 hours a week, and I would go non-stop, but I'd be exhausted after a couple of days. And it feels counterintuitive to take a half-hour break or an hour break and do something else, or do nothing. But actually, it is that recharge that your brain needs. One of the other things I've been getting leaders to do, which has become quite popular these days, I think, is walking meetings. Because going out, and we have the privilege, I guess, in Australia of having generally pretty good weather. So, I started doing that back 15 years ago. And I think a lot of people do that now. And it is actually a really good way to just engage and connect and get in exercise and the air and all that sort of thing, and just out of the office and take a break. And it just does something different. And instead of sitting there with a book and going through
And
all your
take off on the boss if you don't want to listen to him.
yeah, that's right.
Here we'd have umbrella meetings if we go out.
Yeah, right.
Doesn't rain as much as people say, but it sprinkles. Yeah,
Yeah, right. Yeah,
throughout
yeah.
the winter.
Mhm.
It's not totally, but we don't get snow here. I mean, it's not like Hawaii or San Diego.
Yeah.
but it's still can't complain.
Yep.
So give us a quick peek of your book again. And then one of the questions we ask all our guests is, do you have another book that you could recommend? Of course, we're going to recommend your book, Cracking the Business Mastery
Yep.
Code with Brian Tracy, the world famous Brian Tracy, 93rd book, over 100 million copies. But do you have another book that you could recommend to listeners? Something
There's
not
so
necessarily for
many.
HR, but something inspirational, something that's really moved you.
There are so many. I think one of the ones I recommend to everybody to start off with is this Seven Habits,
Mm.
Stephen Covey, because I think that is a really good starting point for people to start thinking about things. And then I go from everything from technical to spiritual from then on in.
Uh,
So there's a lot of and I think it's really underestimated the level of learning you can get from books and listening to people and those sorts of things. So I think it's really important, especially for young people, because I notice they don't read particularly a lot at all, and they get a lot of their stuff from social media, all that sort of stuff, and that's great. But sometimes you just need that solid, evidence-based, foundational stuff that comes in books.
I remember, what was the name of the movie with Denzel Washington about Hurricane Carter? I think it was called The 12th Round, or The Hurricane. The movie was called The Hurricane, but the book was called The 12th Round. And I read that book when I was younger. I didn't do a lot of reading when I was younger, and I read the book. And then the movie came out years later. And the movie is how I envisioned it from reading the book. So I think when people take books to
Yeah.
movie, they actually envision it the way they read it. So the book actually painted a pretty good picture. Another one was the Donald Trump story. He's got a new movie out about him. It was out before the election. It was called The Apprentice. He had a
Yeah.
TV show called The
Yeah,
Apprentice.
yeah.
It was a
I used to
movie.
love
It
that
was, I
once
think, a
upon a
B
time.
movie. But his book, The Art of the Deal, a lot of things, and I read that book 30 years ago.
Yeah.
A lot of things I remember from that book were vivid in the movie.
Yep.
So I think people will get the same from reading your book.
Yeah. I think there's a great connection of books and how you can imagine how they would be in real life or in a movie and that sort of thing. So I think that's always a great
But even
being able
reading
to imagine
yours,
it.
I have yours up on the screen here. So there's a lot of things in there that really come clear. So
Yep.
who would you recommend your book to? Is it people that are working in HR, employees, owners? Who's your target audience with your book?
For me, it's anyone who's interested in leadership or business. So whether you're an employee and you're looking to do a side hustle, and that's great, you really need to think about, is it a hobby or is it a business, that sort of thing, before you make the leap the other way. And really, it's for me, we have a passion with working with medium-sized businesses and helping them grow and scale, and we've done a lot of startups as well. So it's passionate leaders who recognise that there is a journey of leadership, and business owners who recognise that they want to scale up their
And
leadership
and
and their
medium, you
business.
say SMB or small, medium
SME,
sized
yeah.
business, but is there a dollar threshold or a number of employee threshold?
Um, we don't work on dollars because that can be so very different in Australia and around the world. So we normally work with anywhere. So we've done launch startups and help them build to the first 100 and then get them a HR person, that sort of thing. But mainly where we work is in the 50 to 250 employee mark, and we do a lot of also training and coaching programs with larger business and so forth. But when we're doing more grounded strategy and leadership work and coaching work and consulting, it's mainly in that 50 to 250, 300 employee mark, and
Okay.
sometimes the 500. It depends on the country.
Yeah, and what countries are you able to do work in, or what are the main countries? You mentioned at the beginning, but just to follow up
Yep.
for the listeners.
So we work in Australia, New Zealand, Asia Pac, so we call it Asia Pac, so the whole of Asia, Europe, particularly the UK, and we tend to work on the the west side of America. But we have done some other work in New York, but generally from a time difference point of view, unless I'm going there to do something, which I have done. I've gone to work with clients in Palo Alto for a couple of months because there's big transformation things that need to happen. So it really depends.
Nice. And the website, I'm just going to read one out here. I know you have two in the book, but
Yep.
hrexpertsinternational.com.au.
That's the one.
hrexpertsinternational.com.au. Reach out to Vanessa. We're going to have all your links around the video here somewhere. Whether you're watching on Spotify or YouTube, they're all in different places, but just somewhere around the video. Get a hold of Vanessa with all your questions. What's the best way to reach out?
So either through the website, you can grab me on Facebook or LinkedIn, and the book, I've got my email address in there. But if you go to the website, you can see how to get hold of us on the website. And I'm always interested in talking to people, so I love that sort of stuff. So
nice.
And it's been fantastic talking to you.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thanks for coming on the Side Hustle podcast, where we bring on side hustlers trying to get their side hustle going. Thanks,
yeah, that's great,
Vanessa. Thanks a million.
Thanks.
I don't know if did you watch any of the other podcasts, the one with Alex or?
I haven't watched it. I had watched a part of Alex's, and I started watching. Actually, I got caught up on the sales guy one. Michael somebody.
Michael Bumpkin, Dean.
No, not of the. I started going to go on our
the other
authors, and then I got
Michael.
I got onto all your other ones first, and I'm like, oh shit, I've stuffed that up. I should have done the authors first, and then gone to the other one.
No, that's why. Do you know Patrick Bet-David?
No.
He's one of the newer Brian Tracy's. He might be early 50s. Sold his insurance company, but I watched his podcast for years. It's called Valuetainment. He had valuetainment.com.
Right.
And he had business strategies. He'd have a whiteboard and he'd be drawing, if you want to multiply your business by this much, here's how many salespeople you need, how many calls, a lot of sales stuff. I never knew that he ran a giant, massive insurance agency, but he did this webinars and podcasts to bring guests on to get himself credibility. And we revamped. We've done about 300 webinars, but somebody said, why don't you do a podcast? And then I heard that Patrick Bet-David just sold his insurance company for $600 million.
Whoa, shit, man.
So I said, he's onto something. So let's turn it into a podcast and bring business owners on and spread, because it'll bring us some traffic and people get to know us. But more importantly, put some exposure. A lot of our clients have been on the podcast. Get them some, give back a little bit.
Yeah, it's great.
Like my old boxing coach said, it's always better to give than to receive.
Yeah, that's right.
Some people get the boxing joke there, but
yeah, that's good. I like it. Yeah. Well, it's been a delight talking to you and following you. So
I have
to hear more from you.
I'm going to have something that I'm going to send out to everybody. I haven't got it done yet, but
the signatures.
I got my next book cover signed by Brian Tracy on the top.
Wow, fabulous.
And that one's more of not as many stories, but tax stories. But I got this one signed by everybody.
Fabulous.
And I'm I got it scanned, but Stephen J. Larson, Medhat spelled his name wrong.
I know.
And he corrected it at the bottom here.
I know.
And he put a line through it. So what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to keep the original and frame it, but I'm going to correct it. I don't know. Do you think I should correct it and send a copy to everybody or leave it like that?
I think leave it like that.
Yeah, you know what? Leave it like that. Let Medhat stop. Medhat, we'll see. Why don't you fix it? Why don't you fix it? I'm going to say, Medhat, I didn't spell it wrong.
Yeah, that's right. That reminds me, I've got to follow them up about there's some spelling and editing errors in the book. So,
all the books were messed up. I ordered 100 books and they were all
of them were messed up.
It had, for example, this is Alex's.
Well, I hope they're giving you another 100 because that's outrageous.
Well, for example,
because there's
Yeah,
obviously a
this
standard
is
way of it.
my cover, but it has Alex as
Yeah,
the front.
that's for everyone. In everyone's book, Alex comes next after them.
But there's I have
Um,
quite a few that there's Sam and a couple others. It's not just Alex first, but it also has the
ah,
forward, right? The forward is from Alex.
oh no.
Yeah, so that was I got Alex's book on my cover. I told James that's like photoshopping
Oh
my
shit,
head.
I didn't even notice. It says, oh God, I signed one of these and gave it to somebody because I thought it was just the mix up of the
Well, me too.
chapters.
I had about 15 that had
Oh
Alex's name.
shit. This one's got capills.
Yeah.
It. I didn't even notice.
So James said to me, he said, "Oh, mate," he said, "Is it such a big deal?" I said, "Well, it's like
Yeah,
photoshopping my head on
excuse
your
me.
body." Yeah, I said, "James, what? It's like
Come
photoshopping my
on.
head onto your
That's
body."
not acceptable. And one of the things I have said to James is like, I'm a little bit disappointed that this isn't a slicker process. Given this is the fourth book, it should be way better. And for us in Australia, we always have the problem of, oh well, this is how we do it in America. So figure out your own shit, and it's kind of been that again. It's like, no, I didn't sign up to that. I signed up to. This was a book supposed to be a book all about Australian authors, which it turned out not to be, but that's okay. But then don't tell me to go figure it out for myself. I'm paying you to have done some of this stuff for me. And I just thought that was a bit off.
There's
But
a few things that are off, but you know what?
yeah,
I'm just going to make the most of it. I'm not.
yeah, same.
I sent Medhad a message, and I said, when things settle down, just get back to me on how you're going to resolve it.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly. I'm so glad I
but
didn't.
it's not Medhat. That part is actually on the printer.
Yeah,
But whether
but
the instructions,
yeah, exactly. And they should be. That's what I did say to James. If you're going to be selling to Australia, you need to have got the Australian operation shit sorted out because not having a printer, nobody's tested the printer in Australia. I'm not even going to give it a crack until somebody else does. Because it's expensive here to get it in Australia to get it done. We're paying almost $20 a book unless we buy 500 of the bloody things. And then you got to store 500 of the things, and it's like,
what about going in with a couple of the other Australian authors to get a batch and maybe you could get a discount. There's some
yeah,
things.
I will talk to them about that because I also want to do a book launch and see whether anyone's interested in that. But I think one of the things I think is a little bit difficult is it's the same book but just with different covers, so it is difficult to, I guess, help people understand that from that perspective. So I'll have to
I had
think
a
about that.
client reach out to me. I was a little like you said, you thought it was Australian authors. We all had a little bit different
Yeah,
thought on what the book was going to be. When I first saw the ebook, I saw there were 24 authors. And it turned me off a little bit. Like I have to
yeah,
share this, this
yeah,
excitement with 24 other people. But then it was almost 3 hours later, just before we left for San Diego, I opened up an email from a client that I had sent that had
yeah,
downloaded a copy of the ebook because we got it ahead of time.
yeah.
And she said, like, OMG, Rob, I can't believe it. There's 24 other stories in here. She goes, "This is so cool. Thank you so much for the book." And she's just a
Yeah,
genuine person.
yeah,
But the way she said it made me think, wow, people are going to benefit from all these. It's not
yeah,
just me. I don't have the best
100%.
story in the world.
Yeah.
I wasn't top 10 accountants in Hong Kong with 50,000 students.
Yeah.
I don't live in Hawaii half the year like Vanessa. You know, I'm still slugging it out every day in the office.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought, wow, and the happy guy Kapil who, you
He's
know,
just hysterical.
yeah, he just kept everybody fired up all week.
Yeah. Yeah. He's great.
But there's 23 other that's what I said last night. So I sent out the book as an email blast, the free link, but
Yeah.
I told people don't share the book, share the link so I get their emails. That's
Yeah.
my only ask. The second ask was if anybody knows of any speaking engagements, I'd love to talk about my
Yeah.
story in the book. Not about our business, how we can get more
Yeah.
clients, talk about the story. And the third one was we offer this online as a complimentary tax review. So if anybody
Yeah.
wants that, great. now have total 8 speaking engagements.
Yeah, that's great.
Just for last night, I spoke at the National Hockey League team has an annual fundraiser, the
Yep.
Vancouver Canucks. So a pretty
Yep.
big deal. Uh, I got invited to speak, and if I was willing to give out a couple books, I brought 10 books and signed them, and
Yep.
they auctioned them off for charity.
Yep. Yep.
So it will open doors.
Yep.
We just
Yep.
have to use it.
Yeah, I'm
If
hoping
God
it
had
open
wanted.
it. Yeah, I've because I've done a fair amount of speaking stuff, and because I do a doctorate, yeah, it's interesting timing for me because I'm finishing up my thesis in the next 6 months, and then I'll publish a book that's somewhat it's about leadership, but it's a slightly different angle, and I've decided I'm going to do call it the menopause pivot because the amount of women who get to menopause and then decide they don't want to be leaders anymore, don't want to be executive leaders. It's a problem
Why
for
don't you call it
private.
Women Pause Minute?
What do I call it? Menopause? What?
The Women Pause Minute.
Ah, yes,
Instead of menopause, it's womenopause.
yeah. Well, they're
Women with a
often,
Y. Women with a Y.
yeah, yeah, nice. Often people say men are pause, i.e., it's a time when women go, I'm going to see you later, men, for a little while. And ditch their husbands and whatnot. So
Maybe
there are
that's where
lots
the
of
name came
jokes.
from.
There's so many jokes about it. Well, actually, it's well, it started with menstruation, pausing of menstruation, and then all sorts of. Actually, the technical term is climacteric, climacterian, and then menopause syndrome came out. There's all sorts of shit that goes along with it, especially over the last few years, which has been intriguing. So yeah, that's an interesting one. I'll think about that.
I call it just leave while you're ahead. That's
Yeah.
it. You go over there and I'll just go over here in another room.
Yeah, that's right. Chill out.
Okay, awesome. So let's follow up. Let's keep in touch
Yeah,
and
yeah, let's
we'll
do.
send you the link and
And if you're
let's
coming to
share
Australia, let us know.
we're thinking about it now, highly thinking about it.
Cool.
Okay, but you gotta go back to Australia though.
Yeah, I do
Take
have
a
to go
break
back to
from
Australia.
take a break from Hawaii. It must be rough
Yeah,
there.
I know it's tough. Hey, it's a tough life.
Okay, awesome. We'll see you soon.
See ya. Thanks for having me.
Bye
See you
bye.
later. Bye.
There we
Yep.
go. Now it's recording. Now we better be
Yep.
on our best behavior.
You better be.
Yeah, we just got back from San Diego, so maybe just let's recap that a little bit, and before we get going and into the actual podcast where we can drop all the nuggets and all the value. Just what did what did you get out of San Diego?
Um, I think it was a little bit difficult for me because my one of my very good friends had passed a couple of days before, so uh, it was difficult from an energy point of view for me. But it was what I thought was really intriguing was everybody's story and how everybody had overcome. Everybody in the room had overcome a bunch of stuff, and so I thought that was quite intriguing. And it was good. It was a good energy vibe.
Yeah, lots of little I make the analogy to mechanical pieces where some things we learned from, I don't know if you met Robbie or Steve J. Larson,
Mm,
Robbie Summers, mechanical things, how to build a funnel, how you should set up your website, links. That's mechanical stuff, but
yeah,
it's the intuitive stuff that I got out of it. Yeah, and like you said, some of the stories, the adversity
yeah,
that people overcome. But I think that's most entrepreneurs. We all overcome something
yeah,
to get there. Some of us, much worse and much more tragic than others.
yeah.
But you don't succeed unless you put in the hard work and have the bumps and bruises to show for it. Very few don't have that. Very few make it to the top without that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's all about learning forward. So, everyone has the overcoming adversity and being able to, there's always two ways you can go. There's always I'm just going to fall down in a heap and feel sorry for myself. And I've certainly done that a couple of times in my life. Or you just keep getting up and up, one trauma after another or one adversity after another. You keep going. And I guess the resilience, the passion, and the goals really is what everybody shared, regardless of, what their story, individual story was.
And there's different levels of success. I think people who don't really want to be successful, they shouldn't be at these events. They should just be
Yeah,
on the beach relaxing, enjoying themselves.
yeah, that's right.
So all of those come in. One of the things I got from Brian is never over. Like seeing him moving around, having the
Yeah,
hip
yeah,
surgery,
right.
and when is retirement? When does it end?
Yeah,
That's another big question we all have to think about.
yeah. I was actually thinking about that this morning, in terms of, I think he's 82.
80,
Uh,
born
80,
in 1944, so he just turned
right.
80.
Yeah. Uh, so, it's intriguing to still have the level of passion and, resilience that he has at that age. When I look at some, well, firstly, you're lucky to get to that age. And secondly, to have that resilience and enthusiasm and passion, because a lot of 80-year-olds I know, are just surviving or getting through. So again, there's that slightly different mindset, I think, that comes through even at that age.
His mind is working twice as fast as his body.
Yeah, that's right.
Being
And
able to
hopefully,
do,
my worst nightmare is getting something like Alzheimer's or something like that. So I'd rather my body give out than my mind give out. But he's the epitome of your mind kicking in and still kicking on.
yeah, and you're in Hawaii right now, but where do you hail from?
Sydney originally.
Do you still have a home in Sydney?
Yeah, I'm still in Sydney and I generally work in Australia, but I do work around, depending on the clients, around the UK, Europe, Asia, West Coast generally of the States.
Okay. Yeah, with us, I'm always jealous hearing people being able to work with clients in so many countries because we're
Yeah,
stuck
because
in
you're limited.
it's, I say, but there's more than enough money to make here. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
Like meeting the guys from Australia, the boys from, or the Thunder from down under,
Thunder from down under.
uh, Brody and James and
Greg.
Greg. Scott wasn't able to make it, too bad, but they said, well, I don't know if Scott was even invited because they said he would spoil the party or something. So they left him to watch the shop. They can straighten that out on their own. They're all big boys, but meeting with them, they've opened up my eyes to going into the US.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I got out of the event is, think bigger, think about now expanding. And I actually met somebody before I went to Australia and I kind of brushed it aside, put it on the back burner, but I reached out to him as soon as I got back and we've had a couple calls already. So
That's
I
great.
might be able to go into the US.
Yeah.
Got to get a foothold here first, though.
Yeah.
Get a foothold. Okay, are you ready to record? Get into the
Go for it.
let's go for it. Okay.